All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to Election Watch. This will be a by-election results video, the last one of the year. I just wanted to start here because we're coming towards the end of the year. We're on 4,888 subscribers. Phenomenal that this channel only started about a month ago. Your support's been incredible. If we could get those last 112 before the new year and end the year with 5,000 subscribers, that would be fantastic. But I just wanted to say to all of you who have subscribed, thank you very much. I've been very humbled by some of your comments and kind words, and hopefully I can keep continuing to give you the content that you're enjoying into the new year. Obviously, if you've been watching the channel, if you're your first time here, you wouldn't have known, but I've got a baby on the way. Currently trying to figure out how the logistics are going to work because I haven't got a set up at the moment. I'm not in a studio or anything like that, so some thought has to be given to that in the new year. But anyway, I don't want to bore you with all those details. I just wanted to say thank you for your support. If you haven't subscribed yet and you're into UK politics, you're interested in politics, please do subscribe. I think we're doing pretty unique content here, so yeah, join this community, which we are hoping to grow in the next year. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll get into these results. Okay, well, we will start then in Greenwich Council, West Thamesmead ward. Labour won here, but you know, the same story we've been covering multiple times in these by-election results. Just you know, look at the vote share column in the brackets there. You can see the change, and again, it's another pretty damaging night for Labour. Not the worst we've seen for them recently by any means, but you know, again, this is in an area of London where they're very strong, where you know it's not a battleground area for them by any means. It's an area of the country that always votes Labour in recent years. And look, they lost 16% of the vote. Like I say, not the worst result they've seen across the country by any means. The Liberal Democrats did quite well here. Reform came in. We did say unlikely the Reform would do too well in Greenwich, but they beat the Conservatives into third. But clearly it was Labour and Lib Dem mostly here. The Lib Dems having a very good evening, but still a decent chunk behind the Labour Party. So one successful defence for Labour out of the three, but it was the only one. As we move across to Dudley, the Conservatives here actually won, and look at that Labour drop in Labour support in Dudley, in this Brockmore and Pensnet ward, down over a third. These are the sorts of drops that are becoming quite common for Labour, and concerningly common. Like, it's not just the one or two, it's every week we're seeing at least one ward in these by-elections seems to be deserting Labour by about a third, and it's happened here in Dudley. So they've lost the ward to the Conservatives. I said in the preview video that I was, if I had to back a party to win, I'll go with Reform if Labour's vote share did decline substantially, because Reform are the party with the wind in their sails at the moment. But I did also caveat that with the fact that the Conservatives are starting from a higher base. They were the party representing Dudley in Parliament up until 2024 this year. They lost it in the last election in July. But I say the Conservatives are starting in a pretty good position in Dudley, and although Reform are ahead in the nowcast, you know, they're having to start from zero, having not stood here before, whereas the Conservatives have already got a bit of a base to grow on. And look, you can see the Conservatives, as we've said, they oscillate around 10% in terms of improving their vote share recently. Similar here, 7% up for them. Not a huge gain, but enough to see off Reform, who came storming into second place, straight into the 30s%. So a very good result for Reform, I think. Really, it is. And actually, I think, if I'm honest, I always say that using the nowcast for these, when we do the previews, I always preface it with the warning of, you know, the nowcast is not a perfect proxy for local election voting, because it's opinion polling based off Westminster. But if you watch the latest nowcast video, I did say that this area of England, so Dudley is here in the Midlands, where Reform are currently ahead in the polling, ahead of the Conservatives by just about 2.5%, which is why I said, you know, Reform may have a good chance of winning this ward. But I said when we look through the rest of this area, like Warwickshire and Staffordshire, I said, look, a lot of these constituencies are really tight, and you see Dudley is one, North Warwickshire and Bedworth is another one where Reform are currently ahead, but by pretty much nothing, 0.1%. And in a number of these other constituencies, they're pretty close behind in this part of the world. Tamworth's another good example, where Reform are 2.5% behind the Tories. So I said in that nowcast video that in the Midlands area at the moment, the Conservatives are actually still doing pretty well, and Reform are overtaking Labour. So in these constituencies that we can see here, where Reform have taken the lead ahead of the Conservatives, I said if the Conservatives can maintain their current polling, expect to see these constituencies flip-flopping between Reform and the Conservatives, because it is very tight between those at the moment. And I think that, this result in Dudley kind of vindicates that approach. Look, the Conservatives have managed to increase their vote by a small amount, not a huge amount, a decent amount, 7%. A Reform with a very good showing, coming straight into 30%, but not enough to beat the Tories. So the Midlands is going to be tight between Reform and Conservatives, I think, at the moment. Obviously, Labour are just falling away. So that was Dudley. Lastly, the last one for 2024, Milton Regis in Swale. Reform won this one. So 3 Labour defences. They lost 2, won 1. Tories took 1. Reform took another. And look, again, another fantastic result for Reform, up to 34% from nothing, having not stood before. The Swale Independents came second, didn't change their vote. I said in the preview video, of course, that with the Independents standing, that muddies the water slightly in terms of the preview, because I don't know, I'm not local to the area, so I don't know the popularity of those independents. I don't know how popular they are, if they stand a chance against the main parties. Of course, Swale Independents did defend a ward a couple of weeks ago. But here, no, the vote share didn't change. Again, look, Labour down a third. That's 2 this week, where they've seen their vote share decline by a third. And by the way, both in constituencies, parliamentary constituencies that Labour currently hold. Obviously, Dudley was one. This one is Sittingbourne and Sheppey, where Reform are currently in the lead in the polling. Labour won it in 2024, but their vote here is already cratered down to about a fifth, and they're very frankly quite far behind in third now. Reform in the lead, so this is going to bolster them in Kent. They've done very well in Kent in the last few weeks. They also won in Dartford, and also won a council member to Kent County Council. So Kent is going to be a huge target for Reform in May when the county council elections come along. Of course, if they happen, if you've been following the news, you'll know. If you know, you know. But look, a great set of results for Reform, really. I mean, they came second in one, but they've won this one. The Conservatives will be bolstered by the fact they've won another one off of Labour too. So those two parties, I think, are going into the new year, certainly Reform, with a lot of positivity. The Conservatives, I mean, they'll be happy they're not losing anymore. I don't think we can say too much more than that at the moment. If we look at this is the share of the vote in these by-elections since the general election. We looked at it last week as well, and you can just see that steep decline for Labour. Before the election, they were getting about a third of the vote on average in these by-elections. Now they're right the way down to less than a quarter. That's similar to last week, and you can see for the Tories, I said, they'll be going into the year feeling somewhat positive with new leadership, but the vote share that hasn't changed for them. They're only up by less than 0.5%. I think I mentioned that last week as well. They've gone from 23.3% before the election to 23.7% now. So Labour have seen their support cratering, but the Tories haven't benefited from that. Now the Lib Dems have done quite well. They've improved by about 4%, but just look at that steep Reform gradient at the bottom, that turquoise line at the bottom that's gone from 0.2% before the election up to 7.6%. They're already ahead of the amount the SNP get in these elections, and soon they'll catch up to the Greens. Going into May, they certainly have the wind in their sails if they can maintain all of this positivity that they currently have. An interesting chart as well here shows how the other parties sort of perform, and it's particularly highlighting when Reform stand and when Reform don't stand. You can see on that bottom section where Reform have stood in 47% of these by-elections since the general election. You can see Reform eat up 15% of the vote, or increase their vote share by 15%. Labour lose 9.3%, and the Conservatives lose 3%. Whereas if there's no Reform, the Conservatives manage to gain 3.6% and Labour still lose 8.1%. So in all situations, it's really bad for Labour. But you can see both of the two main parties are losing out to Reform, and I think that's a position Reform absolutely want to be in. I've said recently that the narrative is that the Reform split the right-wing vote, but I think that's too simple of a way of looking at it. It's too one-dimensional a way of looking at it. I think in numerous parts of the country, Reform have started appealing to, and will continue to appeal to on current trajectories, Labour voters, traditional Labour voters. And we're certainly seeing that. You know, if you've been following the Nowcast coverage, we'll go and look quickly at it again. You know, you see it up in the north. We've said it loads of times on this channel. These areas in Yorkshire where Labour win all the time. They won in 2019 under Jeremy Corbyn. Even Boris Johnson couldn't win these areas. You know, there's Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is only 2% ahead. Normanton and Hemsworth are only 2% ahead. Royal Marsh and Conisbrough, the Defence Secretary. If you watch the channel, these will all be familiar sounding names and constituencies to you because we cover them a lot. And the reason I cover them is to show Reform are appealing to Labour voters. They are. And I think they're starting to appeal, or the next step actually would be for them to start appealing to the people who didn't vote at all in July's election. And that's what they've got to try and do between now and the next general election, is prove themselves as a genuine electoral possibility for people who didn't even bother voting because you know, they thought reforms are just a protest vote, there's no point in me going and voting for them. And that's why May is so important, and that's why I'll be covering it on this channel from the new year until May, or the build up towards the local elections, how it's looking for each of the parties. And look, if Reform can, again, if these elections take place, if Reform can have a very successful night on the 1st of May and win a lot of councillors and essentially be the big winners of the night, then it may just change the psychology of voters who were so disenchanted with the system they didn't bother voting. It may well be that if they can win, if they can be the big winners, people start seeing them as a genuine government in the future, and that could be a game changer. Could be. You know, this is all speculation at this stage. But we're going to be following that as we build up to May on this channel. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Coming up towards the new year, as I said earlier, my wife's expecting a baby, so I'm not sure what the schedule is going to be looking like in terms of videos between now and the new year. I will try and get at least one. Obviously, there's no more by-elections, but I think there's probably a Nowcast due to come out before the end of the year, so hopefully I can cover that. But if I don't do another video, I'd just like to say to all of you a very happy Christmas and a happy new year, of course, as well. And I will see you on the next video, whenever that may be. Thank you very much for watching.